Picking a scan tool for your shop can be a major decision. There are a variety of tools in the market, and finding the right one at the right price point that will get the job done is always the biggest concern. For our shop, we wanted a tool that would handle our OBD2 vehicles that are pre-can, but also have the capacity to work with later vehicles as well. Price point was important, yet we wanted a really effective tool. After considerable shopping, we focused on the Autel MS906TS, currently what we consider to be the best value in the market. Our first exposure to Autel was a MaxiScope MP408, an outstanding value and very thorough software for an oscilloscope. I would emphasize that in addition to a scan tool, in today's troubleshooting, an oscilloscope is an essential tool and might even be your primary tool for many troubleshooting chores. The distinction between a scan tool and an oscilloscope is that the oscilloscope is working independently of the vehicle's PCM, ECU, or ECM, and in that sense can troubleshoot sensors and any electrical device that moves current over time without the need for a microprocessor or a source for the data stream. Another important factor for us was that the software had to be not only reliable, but something that we as a shop owned. In today's market, many of the scan tools have shifted to cloud-based services that have high subscription rates, either monthly or annually, and you cannot function without a fresh subscription. By comparison, when you buy the MS906TS tool from Autel, you own the software that comes with it, and that software is good for a year, after which point you still own the original software and any updates that you did during that year, and you have the option and can move forward with a subscription on an annual basis that is far more affordable than the subscriptions that are cloud-based. You'll want to take that into consideration when you're shopping or researching the market for a scan tool. Another important factor for us was the quality of the hardware and the actual tablet, and here Autel, for the price point, has everyone beat. We'll walk through the features of the MS906TS and see if you don't agree that we made the wisest choice for our shop, and this is a tool that may work well in your shop or serious do-it-yourself garage. When our 1999 Jeep XJ Cherokee was new, the factory scan tool was the DRB3, available from Miller SPX. The DRB3 scan tool is now obsolete, and its last retail price was $6,000. Fortunately, we now have a variety of aftermarket scan tools to fill the void. Considering all scan tools in the market, our choice is the Mechanix MS906TS, available from Autel. Ruggedly constructed and priced in a range ideal for the independent shop or serious DIY user, the MS906TS has features found in the highest end equipment. The 9 OBD2 adapters furnished with the North American kit are all that are necessary for most independent shops. Navigation and step sequencing is easy to follow. Software is the key with any scan tool, and this software is well conceived. Buttons are clear and easy to follow. The MS906TS processor is fast. The MS906 Pro, now available, is even faster. The range of functions and uses is broad and only limited by the microprocessor on board in the vehicle. Like factory scan tools, the MS906TS is only limited by the calibration of the sensors and the number of features feeding data from the microprocessor. The vehicle manufacturer's parameters set in the PCM, ECU, or ECM is always a limiting factor with any scan tool. The MS906TS software can stream and read data from the manufacturer's computer. The sensors and devices feeding information to the ECM, ECU, or PCM determine the parameters found in the data streaming to the scan tool. A bonus feature of the MS906TS is the VCI, the Bluetooth interlink between the diagnostic adapter and the tablet. When used, the VCI eliminates the stigma of cords and cables running everywhere. Since 1996, OBD2 has been refined, and the earlier vehicles may have less features available for data streaming, while later vehicles have increasingly more data available. Here, Autel has kept up to date on all of the developments in OBD2, adding features that read the additional data of later model vehicles. For our particular fleet, Jeep, Dodge Ram, and Volkswagen adapters are all we need. For the independent shop catering to all vehicles, the complete set of adapters is ideal. For a 1999 Jeep XJ Cherokee and 2005 Ram Cummins pickup, the 16 Chrysler adapter works with our OBD2. Before we walk through the MS906TS scan tool, let's take time to make certain that the battery is in top condition. This step is essential for not only the function of an ECM, ECU, or PCM, but for accurate scan diagnostics. While our battery load tested fine, these terminals are not making full contact, and this loss of voltage can impact the performance of the ECM, ECU, or PCM. Battery service, like shown here, used to be a routine part of service. Today, this is an exception to the rule and yet a vital and still essential part of vehicle maintenance. When these steps are performed routinely, this kind of service can extend the life of what is now an expensive item, the battery. Battery manufacturers like to boast that their batteries are zero maintenance. Lead-acid batteries like this one can benefit from periodic topping off with distilled water, if the amount of distilled water is minor. Sealing the terminals and posts will prevent the need for scraping the posts and inside of the terminals. Now we're ready to review the features available on the 1999 XJ Cherokee diagnostics. The VCI connects the diagnostic port to the tablet. Let's begin with a diagnostics overview of the entire system. First off, the ECM or PCM in the case of a Jeep model or Chrysler products is in good shape, and so is the TCM. Both pass. The airbags have passed. Now we get into not only scans, but live data streaming of all of these pieces of information available from the PCM. This is where real troubleshooting cleaves away from simply replacing parts. Of course, you can read codes with the MS906TS, but as you can see here, code reading is just the beginning. 1999 was 4 model years into OBD2. The parameters in the PCM of our Jeep vehicle offer far less information than later PCMs. Despite this, notice how many devices and PCM parameters are available for this 1999 vehicle. Rather than relying on parts replacer theories in forums and other sources online, notice how much more diagnostic troubleshooting can be done with an accurate device like this MS906TS scan tool. To be clear, code reading is not enough. Codes often generalize or are completely off track. Diagnostics on this level are accurate. To illustrate advances in OBD2 diagnostics, we'll look at our 2005 Dodge Ram 3500 Cummins-powered truck. Notice the parameters that are available and the large number of modules that are monitored continuously by the PCM or ECM or ECU. Our truck was purchased new and now has 184,473 miles on it. All service, maintenance, and diagnostics have been performed in our shop. This truck, like all our vehicles, is on a rigid preventive maintenance schedule. Keeping this truck in this condition has kept us from having car payments or truck payments for 14 years. Look at the left column. Notice the list of contemporary functions that this scan tool has. There are ADAS settings, TPMS, an interface for TPS programming. You name it. Test results can be stored on the cloud in step with the high-end equipment. Let's walk through the pre-scan function. The Chrysler adapter is hooked up to the OBD2 port. The Autel VCI is also in place. Here the pre-scan begins with an ECM engine control module check. Moving on to the TCM or transmission control module check for the 48RE transmission. The ECM, PCM, TCM is talking to the tablet through the VCI, the transfer case module, the body controller, and the airbag occupant restraint have all passed. The HVAC has passed. This is good news, especially the HVAC, which is known to have problems. This truck has had no HVAC problems since new. The Autel software is intuitive and user-friendly. It tells us what to do next. The faults shown are not defects. They are devices that are not available on this application. Here we show a stored code, and this is a carryover from an aftermarket accessory that was added. Let's erase that code and see if it comes back or not. Intuitive again. Follow the steps requested. Here's a caution about the diagnostic trouble codes that might be stored. The stored shift quadrant code has now been erased successfully. The trouble code is gone. Let's track live data and see what's going on within the functions on the vehicle. Once again, we'll use the Bluetooth Wi-Fi of the VCI. We're now reading each of these functions in real time. If the engine is running, we get different readings than if the engine is off and the key in the on position. This is simply an overview of all of the things that we can check with the MS906TS scan tool. Notice the extensive list of devices that can be checked. This was not the case with the 1999 vehicle, and again illustrates the fact that later vehicles have even more capacity to be diagnosed with a scan tool. Now we'll do some active testing. Similar to the original DRB3 scan tool, individual devices can be actuated with the scan tool. Here we will get inside the PCM as it actually monitors. Here is a partial list of devices that we can check. The list continues and shows how sophisticated these OBD2 systems became. This is how a diagnostic scanner like the MS906TS pays for itself. We'd much rather invest in a scan tool like the MS906TS than in second-guessing and replacing parts needlessly. Scan tools like the MS906TS are also a savings to consumers who sublet their work to a shop. This is quicker troubleshooting and less labor time. Curious whether the brake light switch works? Try this. The switch is monitored for open and closed position. The onboard computer or ECM, ECU, PCM knows whether the turn signals are working or not. The Autel MS906TS is talking to the computer. Dome lights can be troubleshot from the computer. As long as the onboard computer is monitoring these devices, that information can be retrieved by the MS906TS. Many late-model vehicles have these functions. Brake bleeding with an ABS system is involved. This scan tool can talk to the PCM and bleed the brakes in the ABS system. Of course, the powertrain is of key interest in the diagnostics of a vehicle. Under system checks, one of the most interesting tests that can be run on a diesel engine is the injector kill test. This test takes each injector offline individually and notes the difference in the performance loss with that injector offline. Note the substantial time savings in running this test compared to the ordeal of removing injectors for bench testing. The labor cost savings is substantial. There will be little or no difference if an injector is not functioning properly, and therefore this is an injector test. It is also a relative compression check in that it shows the pull of each cylinder with or without its injector working. A compression test on a diesel engine is another labor sinkhole, and this time-saving quick check indicates the relative strength of each cylinder compared to the others. Another and even more effective relative compression check is the starter motor load test, which can be performed with a MaxiScope MP408 coupled to the MS906TS. The cranking starter draw with the MP408 measures the amperage draw as each piston comes up on its compression stroke. An amp clamp on the starter motor cable measures the amperage draw in milliseconds. As the engine cranks over, the fuel pump is disabled by removing the fuse, which prevents the engine from starting during this cranking cycle. The cranking relative compression check works well for both gasoline and diesel internal combustion engines, as long as the starter motor is in decent condition and the battery has ample amperage. The test is accurate. The cranking relative compression check is actually measuring the piston coming up on its compression stroke and comparing that resistance at the starter motor between each cylinder. This test is quick, straightforward, and only requires the touch of a button. Killing each injector individually tells us whether the injector is functioning properly or not. This test works on gasoline engines as well as diesels with electronic fuel injectors. Our 24-valve 5.9-liter Cummins engine is a common rail diesel with 6 injectors. Confirming that the injectors are working well, we move on. These tests include the water and fuel voltage. These tests are key on without the engine running. Sensor data is valuable. We know that the battery is holding a full state of charge. With the Ram Cummins truck, this is 2 12-volt batteries. The ECM battery voltage is telling us that the charging circuit is working well. The individual tests are a reflection of the information and data that the ECM, PCM, or ECU is monitoring. These are throttle pressure settings for upshift and downshift points. We'll want to know more about that actual setting and also the duty cycle percentage. The sophistication of the monitoring process in the 2005 Ram is substantial. Autel's software can keep up with all of this factory monitoring that the ECM or PCM is capable of doing. This engine runs well, but the MS906TS scan tells us specifically how the engine is functioning. Notice that the engine RPM monitoring is uniform between the crankshaft position sensor, the camshaft position sensor, and the ECM. The Cummins ISB's inline 6-cylinder engine uses timing gears, and this is an indication that not only the sensors, but the camshaft and crankshaft gears are intact and working properly. Code readers and lesser scan tools cannot perform these functions. If there is an intermittent glitch in particular, the MS906TS is the scan tool to have for monitoring and recording any glitches that might occur. The engine is gradually warming up in this test. Autel's MS906TS scanner keeps up with this information. There is an in-tank lift pump or fuel pump module and a high-pressure pump for the diesel injectors. The in-tank module or lift pump brings the fuel to the engine, where the high-pressure pump pressurizes fuel for the injectors. The MS906TS scan tells us specifically how the engine is functioning, how each of the sensors is monitoring data. The ECM software has targets that helps the ECM or PCM monitor and reset functions to their targets. The ECM software has targets that are met after receiving sensor data and making adjustments. Parameters are met within milliseconds in an electronic fuel and spark management system. In this case, the injectors of a diesel engine are the key to ignition. Note the relatively low AC high side pressure. Also, the fan speed at just over 550 RPM. Now, with the AC high side pressure boosted to 260 plus PSI with the AC turned on, the fan speed is ticked up to 642, now 774 RPM. Now the fan is spinning at 800 plus RPM. This is normal for air conditioning, but also a good indication of how much power draw there is when the AC turns on. The Cummins engine barely feels this load, but with a small vehicle or a smaller engine, it would be noticeable. Recall that we took a look at the TTVA actual position. Let's revisit that with the engine running. While the fuel pressure set point is constant, the fuel pressure sensor illustrates the wide variance of sensor pressure. The water and fuel voltage and water and fuel counts each look normal. The actual function of the water and fuel sensor is resistance measurement. Bench testing with a volt ohm meter is required. A major advantage of the MS906TS by Autel is its interface with the TPMS and also with the MP408 oscilloscope. After walking through the MS906TS Autel scan tool, I'm sure you agree this is an exceptional value for the price point. The good news is that all of the Autel tools interface well together, and in our case, we can now use the MP408 MaxiScope, also an Autel mainstay tool, with the MS906TS. We're looking forward to sharing our shop diagnostic and analytical troubleshooting to get the job done.